Welcome to Off the Record News. I'm your host, Diana Longry. Thank you for tuning in. The topic tonight, the issue of special assessments for road projects. And believe it or not, because of the content of past programs, I've actually had people from other communities contacting me, because previously we used Maplewood as an example, but the principles apply no matter what town you live in, because state statute governs how much a city can charge for a special assessment when you have a road project coming through your neighborhood. And so whether or not you live in Maplewood or Roseville or Cottage Grove or Stillwater, the law, the state law, applies all the same. And of course, there's also a large body of case law that has to do with the special assessments that cities charge residents. I was going through some of my old film footage, and as I've mentioned before on previous programs, I'm in this process, which is a very long process, of taking these boxes and boxes of VHS tapes from past city council meetings, past meetings, old film footage, and taking all that from VHS tape and then putting it all on DVD so that we can find it, so we know what we've got. And it's amazing, some of the things that I find. Well, wouldn't you know it, just recently I found film footage from a Maplewood City Council meeting of November 2003. And so some people might think that challenging your street assessment is something that's new, that it's something revolutionary, that it's something that, well, has just been dreamed up in the last couple of years. But you see, it's not true. The state statute has been around for quite a long time, and we've got film footage of citizens who were contesting the special assessment that was being levied against their property back in 2003. So I think what I want to do is I'm going to start off with this film footage so that you can hear what this citizen has to say, because he's done a lot of research into the issue, into looking at the statute, and if I recall correctly, I think that he also at one point in time worked for the Minnesota Revenue Department, so he's one sharp cookie. He knows how the state law works. He knows how to understand what the law is and how to use it to protect his rights as a citizen. So let's take a look at this film footage. It is from November 2003 Maplewood City Council meeting.
You can't say your system assessment is fair. It isn't. It's not fair to me, and it's not fair to a lot of people. And I want something done about that in the future. Your method of assessment isn't correct. I want to also talk about what happened at the very first...
Now, I do want to interject here, is that you heard him say, your assessment method is not correct. And see, the state law, together with the case law, says that there's two parts to the analysis in looking at a special assessment for a street assessment. The first prong of that test is the methodology used to come up with an assessment number, is that methodology, is it constitutional? And to be constitutional, it has to, in some way, utilize a market value analysis. So they can't just pick a number arbitrarily out of the air someplace. They have to use some method, and there can be any number of methods, but some method that approximates using a market value analysis. Because you see, the state law and the case law requires that this special assessment being levied against your property as a result of that road improvement project cannot be more than the increase in market value that your property has as a result of the project. So you see, if a project goes through and it's undeveloped land, and the project comes through, brings in city water and city sewer and other amenities that were never there before, but makes that land now more valuable so that it can be built upon, you could see where the increase in market value would lie, because now you can advertise and say, I have a lot that is improved with city water and city sewer. However, what happens when you go through a developed neighborhood that already has city water, already has city sewer? It has everything except, well, maybe they don't have curbs. And so does that increase the market value of those houses, of those parcels, simply because they put in a new street? So you see, this is what the analysis is. And this gentleman, way back in 2003, was indicating that he believed that Maplewood's method of coming up with that number was not right. And as it turns out, we've got a couple of our cases where indeed it was determined that the method that was used was unconstitutional. Now, as a result of that finding, Maplewood has changed their methodology to be one that approximates a market value analysis. But the analysis doesn't stop there. The next question is the assessment more than the increase in market value? And that's where it comes down to the battle of the appraisers. So let's continue on, though, with this film footage from this gentleman from November 2003.
First meeting that we had with the city, that was February 13th. At that meeting, Chuck Hall agreed in a promise to me that two appraisals would be done on my property. He could choose one, and I would choose one, and the city would pay for them both, and I agreed to it. Then on May 12th, the city voted to do the road. So I wrote Chuck a letter on May 20th, and I asked him to acknowledge that this was going to be our agreement, that we're going to get two appraisers, and the city would pay for them both. Month went by, never got a reply. So on June 23rd, a little more than a month later, I called up. Doesn't seem like Chuck wants to talk to me. I think he's avoiding me. I talked to Chris Cabot. He says, yeah, we're going to go ahead. You can pick an appraiser, and we'll use that. And he offered to send out the name of 4 appraisers that the city uses. And I said, fine, send it out. My intention was not that I wanted to use one. I wanted to know who not to use, just in case they'd be biased. And I did call all of those 4 people that were on the city's list. The first one I called, I got no answer. The second one I called, his secretary said he'd call me back. He never did. The third one I called, his name was Blake Davis. He said a new street often adds a little value to the property, but it is mostly judgment to determine that. He said if I wanted to pay him $150, he'd come out and talk to me about it. The fourth one I talked to Bob Johnson. He said this whole thing is a game. The cities find appraisers that will get the value of the property up to increase by the amount of the assessment or more. He said he couldn't help me in this because it would be impossible to find similar properties that had been sold with and without a new street. And he's been an appraiser for 31 years.
Now you heard exactly what that appraiser told the citizen, is that it's a game, and that it's, you find an appraiser who wants to work with the kind of theory that the city wants to use, and so that's the number they come up with. So let's continue on.
Right after that, this was on July 2nd, I went into the Yellow Pages, and I called, the first person I called was Bill Cushman at Appraisal Concepts, and he's in Roseville, and he said he never worked for Maplewood, so thought good. And he said that call him and have him come out and look at my property 1 week before the street was torn up. And I thought, well, I don't want to wait till that last minute in case it would fall through, so I called another one. And I talked to Minnesota Appraisal Services in Shoreview, and they said they would appraise my property for $300 before the street went in and then after the street went in. And I said, okay, please send me a letter to that effect, because Chris Cabot said he wants a written letter. So they sent me a letter on July 5th. I called.
And now you heard what he was saying, is that the appraiser said he would do an appraisal before the project commenced, and then do an appraisal after the street improvement project is completed. And that's exactly the way it has to be done, because according to case law, in order to be able to demonstrate if there is that increase in market value, you have to have a before and an after appraisal done, so that way you could tell what's going on. Now, later on in the show, we're going to show you some film footage from a recent city council meeting where there's some discussion about what the dates might be for these before and after appraisals. And certainly, you want to have it at relatively close in time. And it's my understanding that you want to have between your first appraisal and your second appraisal approximately, they should be within the same year's period of time. So if you have the one done like in April, the next one should be done before the next April, because then you have two endpoints that are relatively close in time, and yet they're before and after that project. But as you heard when we were looking at the clip earlier, that second point is that sometimes with developed land, it's very difficult to find similar land and to find properties where you have land that's improved, and then looking at whether or not if there's road projects or there isn't a road project, and so it's a very difficult situation. And so it's hard to find those comparables. So let's continue on.
I called up Chris, I read him the letter, told me what it was said, and he said that sounded fine and we could use it, but have the letter addressed to the city. So I called them up, and on July 11th they sent a letter to Chris Cavett, and they said they'd appraised my property before and after for $300 each time. And they also included a sentence in there that said, in their professional opinion, that the new road will not increase the value of my property. And this company is completely at arm's length from me. I have no connection with it ever. I've never talked to them before. I'm relying on that as my appraisal. When they offered to make a deal that they would accept my appraisal. And I think that's the way it should be. Then I called Chris, and he kind of changed his tune on the whole thing. And he said, well, he didn't want to, have one appraisal now and then wait till the whole project was done to have another appraisal. And then he even went on to say, but what he really wanted was a study of what happens to house values when they get new streets. But that's not what I wanted. I wanted to know exactly what happens to my property. Does it go up in value?
And he's exactly right. It's what happens to your property, not what is the overall value for the neighborhood, for the community. But you will find that to be a common thread in how the city tries to then sell the idea about how these special assessments and the street road improvement projects, that it's for the benefit of the whole community, and so therefore everybody benefits from this increased value. And yet you see, according to the statute and the case law, it's specific to that property alone, because that is the property that is experiencing the special levy, and because of the constitutional issues, that's the property that it has to be concerned with and no others. So let's continue on.
You are not. So this is where we're at. 12 days ago, October 29th, Pete Samfer comes out to my house. He was sent out there to appraise my property by Chris Cavett. He took pictures of everything, measured it all up, and he said in about 30 days he would have an appraisal of my property. And he also said about 1/3 of the time the house doesn't go up in value because of a new street. Now, I don't know why you want to...
So now, here's an issue that I want to bring up, because this is something very fascinating, is that at that time, in 2003, the city, when they were doing their appraisals, their theory was that when you do an appraisal of developed land that's improved, that already has buildings, structures, homes, garages, whatever on it, is that you do an appraisal of the entire property. The property plus the improvements, the house, the garage, whatever is there, because that is the parcel of land as it comes, both before and after the road improvement project. However, some cities, including Maplewood, are switching to a new idea, a new theory that they're trying to float, which is not necessarily, in my view, consistent with what the case law is, which is they're saying, pretend that the structures, the improvement structures, do not exist. Pretend they don't exist because it's only the improvements, the value that's improved in the land itself. And it has nothing to do with the structures. But yet, it doesn't seem that they all either take any compensation, or in fact, of if you were to remove the building, how much would that change the value? So you see, appraisal can be kind of a tricky business in that you have to really pay attention to what's being done. But back in 2003, the city certainly thought that their appraisals included the land and the improvements thereon. Today, it's different. They have a different tune. They're saying it should be only land only. Let's pretend the buildings don't exist. Let's continue on with the film footage from 2003.
Deny my cancellation tonight when you haven't even heard from the people that you sent out to appraise my property. It just doesn't make sense. I want to know, is my property going to go up $12,000, $11,000? Chuck All, in denying all the requests, says the properties will go up in value, but he doesn't say the amounts. It'll never go up $11,000. That's silly. And I'm aware of other realtors that have also told me that your house might sell a little quicker if you have a new road, but you're not going to get any more for it. I want to point out one other thing that happened at the meeting on May 12th, when you people have voted to approve this road. Chuck All said that to fix this street and repave it, it would cost $100,000. And that if you divided it by the 23 houses, that would be $4,300 apiece. Now, I want to know why he would assign 100% of the cost of that street to the houses and ignore the church and Hazel Ridge and Tilges. And if you look at the current assessment system, the houses are paying $115,000, and the other properties are paying $140,000. That's a ratio of 45 to 55. If you take the $100,000 and assign 55% to the church and to Hazel Ridge and to Tilges, you leave $45,000, and you divide $45,000 by 23 houses, you got less than $2,000. So I'm really disgusted that he would present information like that to you, which is so biased or ignorant, I don't know what, but it's disgusting to me. And that was immediately before you people voted on this project. So I think something needs to be done there. Now, tonight what I would like you to do is cancel my assessment, because this is the agreement we had, that they would take my appraisal and use it. And if you can't do that, the next fairest thing would be to wait until the appraisals come in. Or assess me $4,860, which everybody else is paying. But this $11,645 is ridiculous. Especially when you look at a 75-unit building that's paying $14,000. It's not fair. And I'm willing to answer any questions you have. I should mention one more thing if I could. I think the city is not doing a good job of finding out, setting this assessment rate. I talked to Chris Cabot several times. I tried to find out, he thought that the city had gotten some appraisals before on houses to determine if they went up in value. And he couldn't show me anything of that. So I don't think you've ever gone to the necessary, what I think is necessary, to find out if you really are raising someone's value.
Well, I've got a question. Is this the law that you presented?
Yes. That the court cases have said, and I'm told by many people that the law says that if you don't raise a person's value, you can't assess them more than you raise their value. So that's why everybody's talking about, that's why Chuck Hall is saying is our property is going up in value. But is it? I don't believe so. I believe, if anything, you're going to harm our property because we have a new road which is going to carry more and faster traffic. I was satisfied with the road before. It was adequate for me, and anything you did to it was not for me. I do not believe it will increase my value. I had an appraiser send you a letter to that effect, and even the appraiser that you sent out said that 1/3 of the time a house might not go up in value, and that's probably more so on a busy street than on a residential street. So I'm asking that you cancel my assessment tonight.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else that would like to speak up?
Now, I want to point out, back in 2003, you notice there's Bob Cardinal. He was mayor at that time. Today on the Maplewood City Council, he's a city council member. So he has been through these types of hearings on many occasions, many occasions, because he was mayor for 6 years. And now he's, I believe, in his second year as a city council member. So special assessments for road improvement projects is not something new for Bob Cardinal. And so he's asking now if there's anybody else who would like to get up and speak. And for many of you who are, especially from Maplewood, you might recognize the lady who comes up to speak next, because she has been very active in our community, and she's up at the legislature quite often working on AARP issues, and she's even come up before the Maplewood City Council from time to time at visitor presentations when we used to have visitor presentations. So let's take a look and see who's up next.
Please state your name and address for the clerk.
Mayor, City Council. My name is Christine Stone. I've been here 3 times. This is my 3rd time on the same, so I don't think you have any doubts about what I'm saying. I believe these assessments are totally unfair. You say that it will improve our property. We've had 2 months and 8 days of hell with doing this. We come out to a pile of dirt. We come out to traffic, driving through traffic. We start out one end of the street. We can't get out there. We turn around and go back. Well, thankfully now they finally have a street there that we're driving on. And I agree, it's a good street. But I don't live on this street. I live on a house that's up 100 feet from the street. So I think, you know, the street is great. It'll be good when you get Legacy Village in. It'll be good for all the businesses around there. Church, I'm sure, appreciates it. But I don't spend that much time on the street. I live in my house. And I want to give you an idea of what my house is. It started out as a two-room cabin in 1926 for a person that lived uptown. They came out there in the summertime. In 1930, 3 more rooms were built on and a porch. In 1955, we built a living room onto it. There is nothing up to code on that except our living room, which was built in 1950. So I don't see that having a beautiful street in front of me is going to make my property worth 1 penny more than it is. It's a house. I love it. I lived in it for 60 years, and I don't have any problem with it. But it is not going to be any more valuable when this all is done and said. It's not going to be any more valuable than it is right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
So next then, it's going to be, we're going to show the vote. And the reason I want to show you the vote is because I want you to pay attention, particularly to how Mayor Bob Cardinal votes. Because then we're going to fast forward to today, 2012, when he flip-flops. So let's continue on.
Further comments? Take a vote. Kathy?
Aye.
Chair votes no. Marv?
Aye.
Julie?
I'm voting no.
Ken?
Aye.
Okay.
So that passed 3-2, which means that those people who objected to their assessments, that the city denied their objections. So then it went forward, and in the end, it's my understanding that Mr. Ron Erickson, that he actually did file his action to district court as is allowed under the state statute. I do not know if any of the other objecting parties did or not. But you'll notice, though, that Bob Cardinal voted no. And I think that, you know, it makes sense. He's in commercial real estate. He's a broker. He understands how appraisals work. He's got that kind of a background. And so what Mr. Erickson was talking about rang true. And, you know, there you go. So now we're going to fast forward, and now we're going to take a look at a project, a road improvement project in an area that's called the Hills and Dales area. Now this particular project started in about 2009. It didn't really actually have their assessment role enacted until 2000, but there were 11 homeowners who objected, and then after objecting and having their objections not honored by the city, that they then went on to district court, as the law says that they can, to bring it to the district court judge. And in their petition to the district court judge, they said, one, that the method that the city uses to come about that amount of that special assessment is unconstitutional. And two, the amount of the special assessment is more than any increase in market value that any one parcel receives as a result of the project. Well, lo and behold, as time went on, you know, cases, they kind of take a while to get through the court system. As it turned out, it was the city conceded that based upon another previous case that the method they used was unconstitutional. So they agreed to a dismissal and that they would reassess within a reasonable period of time based upon having a method that would be constitutional, and that they would then do their reassessment. And the state law allows for that, that once an assessment, a special assessment, has been set aside for any reason, either because the council decides to set it aside, or a judge decides that it must be set aside, or maybe the parties agree, like we did, to set it aside, then the city can do their reassessment. So now this group of people, they are at that stage for the reassessment. Well, then when the reassessment now is being done this month, February 2013, they've had some surprises. So let's look in on the first hearing, the public hearing that was held on the Hills and Dales project, where, well, you can guess, I was their attorney, so you'll all be in some of the clips here too. But let's get started with this public hearing where they're talking about the process, and let's go from there.
And it's a public hearing. This has to do with the Hills and Dales Area Street Improvements, which is Project 09-15, and it consists of a reassessment hearing, and a resolution is being requested that would adopt an assessment roll. So I got to catch up on where we're at here in the packet. Let's see. And so we have Mr. Love with us tonight.
This is the reassessment hearing for 11 properties on City Project 09-15. These 11 properties include 2002 Duluth Street, 2132 Atlantic Street, 2117 Atlantic Street, 1232 Schreier Avenue, 2017 Duluth Street, 1246 East County Road B, 1237 Leland Road, 2210 Duluth Street, 1685 Howard Street, 1866 Furness Street, and 1695 Howard Street. The city engineer and the city attorney have been working on the reassessment process. These 11 properties lodged an objection as part of the 09-15 improvement project, and this went through the district court. Part of the ruling called for the reassessment of these 11 properties, which we are going through now. A special benefit appraisal has been conducted, and the assessment roll has been attached to your agenda report.
Now, when he says the special benefit appraisals have been conducted, this special benefits appraisal, as I mentioned before, looks at only the land, as if the buildings that improve the land do not exist. So they're creating a scenario by which, if you were to take that land all by itself and as if it were a brand new, as if it were a lot that, say for instance, the house had burned down, or some other reason why the house isn't there. Now that's of course, I don't believe a realistic way of looking at that special benefit appraisal. So anyway, let's continue on.
I believe tonight's meeting should be probably conducted as a regular assessment hearing. Alan, I'm not sure if you have anything there.
Council have any questions having to do with the staff report? So, we have a public hearing portion that we will open up, and I guess I have a question. I just want to make sure that I'm straight beforehand. And sorry, but I did not remind people that there was a sign-up sheet in the back of the room to sign up to speak at the public hearing. And so right now, we have just one person signed up. That person is Diana Longry. And at least it's my understanding that she's actually the attorney for, if not all, most of the people who had filed the objections. Is that correct? Is it appropriate that we're speaking to an attorney when isn't there litigation going on?
Mayor and Council, the litigation that was going on was essentially settled by way of a dismissal of the previous lawsuit in light of the fact that the city would go back and essentially do what we're doing right now, which is reassessing those properties based on a new benefit analysis. So that's why it's back here before you. Certainly any member of the public, including an attorney representing the members of the public, can speak at this public hearing.
Okay.
So it's appropriate. I don't necessarily encourage you to, engage back, but certainly at a public hearing you can take in information.
All right.
And no, there's no current, these aren't open files anymore.
Now, of course, Mr. Rossbach, being the mayor of Maplewood, should probably know if it's an open court file or not, but that's a different issue. Let's continue on.
Okay. Ms. Cave?
And with this being a reassessment hearing, were the original assessments, we don't have them in here, so then they'll be...
Mr. All, weren't the original assessments the same as these, or?
Okay.
Mayor and Council,
Oh,
the assessments are based off of the new appraisal, so they are different, but they're based off the new appraisal report.
Okay.
And certainly, if you want to see these, we'll be able to bring them back. I imagine what you're going to get is objections to this assessment tonight, and certainly when the report comes back, you can see what was done before. So I don't think any of us thought to actually include the previous assessment amounts, but Mr. Love is correct. They are different than before, but it is a reassessment.
So what they're saying is that in the staff report to the council, they just simply said what the new special assessment proposed is right now. That they didn't include the background information to say, well, the last time when we did the first special assessment, this is how much the special assessment was set at then. And then after doing the appraisal, this is the new number that has been arrived at. Also, not included in that packet is any information at all whatsoever on the appraisal done on each property. And you see, each of those council members, they have access where they could actually look at or inquire after the appraisal that was done on each property so that they could make up their own mind, so that they could do the analysis, so they could see whether or not it made sense to them, particularly in light of the fact that several of them have real estate experience, an issue that I pointed out to them. So let's continue on.
Essentially, we have to go through the entire process again, because that's what the chapter in Minnesota statute requires. You go through the motions again.
And so just like at any standard reassessment hearing, we have the thing where by the time we close the public hearing, they have to file their objection?
Correct.
Otherwise, they lose their ability to do
Correct.
so?
Think about this as just an initial assessment. It might be easier for you to manage this as if you were thinking about you were just doing it for the first time.
Now, it's interesting that these are the questions being asked because only, I think about 9 months ago or so, on another batch of properties, a reassessment had been called on, and they went through the same exact process for that group of properties that were in the reassessment stage. So it's sort of like they all just forgot how this all worked. So anyway, let's continue on.
So the only difference here is you don't have another project that you've actually voted on. It's not a new project, it's a completed project, you're just doing the assessment hearing.
Okay. And so everyone who's here having to do with this item, I want to make sure that you do understand that if you do want to object to these new assessments, that you would have to file your objection prior to the end of the public hearing. So,
We have forms.
excuse me?
Don't we always supply forms?
I think we probably have forms if they need them. Oh, I see, okay. We don't need a form.
I believe they can, Mayor, Council, an objection can be filed either in writing or verbally at the meeting. So,
But at least at
they
this
do
point, we
need
only
to
have-
note each property.
Okay,
So, and an
Okay.
attorney certainly can represent each property.
okay. All right, well, at that point then, I will open the public hearing. And at this point anyway, the only person signed up is Diana Longery.
Thank you very much. Diana Longery, 1321 Frost Avenue East. Before I get started, I will hand in the objections. I know that a number of the property owners who are here have their own handwritten objection, or that they may want to speak afterwards. But I am handing in actually an objection which lists all the properties, and I'll hand that in now.
And then is that, just so that I understand, Ms. Longery, is that you just handed in, is that been signed in one way or the other by all of the various people affected? All right, so what is the official collection of the objections? I mean, can someone file an objection who is not the property owner?
Okay, so first of all, I'll read the objection to you, and I think that'll answer the questions. Thank you. This is to the City of Maplewood on behalf of the owners of the below-listed properties which were identified earlier, that as the agent and the attorney for these individuals, this objection is hereby given to the proposed special assessment against the properties that have been identified prior to opening the public hearing. And the objection is because the proposed special assessment is greater than the benefit received, i.e., it's greater than an increase in market value as a result of the Hills and Dales Area Street Improvement City Project 0915. But I've also attached to this other additional information that I think will be helpful to the council, because further, these objecting owners, as you heard earlier, were plaintiffs in Ramsey County File Number 62 CV 106743, whereby the parties, the city and the property owners, entered into a stipulation to dismiss without prejudice. And I attached a copy of that stipulation for dismissal without prejudice to your packet so that you have that to read in case you hadn't ever seen that. Now, under the terms of this agreement, the city had the right to, if it wanted to reassess, but that it would reassess within a reasonable time period. That's a requirement of the agreement that was entered into. So the question is, what's a reasonable time period? The objecting owners assert that this assessment is not within a reasonable time period. You'll notice that the stipulation was signed in April 2012, April 10th, I believe it was, 2012. Today, it is February 11th, 2013. Now, Project 0915 has been finished for over a year. Also, the fund account for this road project was defunded and closed in December 2012. All the money that was left in that account has all been shuffled off to other projects. That account is closed. And it has been, as I mentioned, 10 months since the stipulation was signed. And so therefore, we believe that in looking at this issue, not only is the assessment, the special assessments being proposed today, we believe not commensurate with the increase in value attributable to each property owner's property, but we also believe that the city has not been diligent in enforcing its interests under this stipulation, and therefore should be foreclosed from now advancing those interests. It's unexcusable delay. Now, during the course of this time, here's another thing to consider when you're thinking about unreasonable time period. During this time period, certain of the plaintiffs have died already. Certain of the plaintiffs have sold their homes already to other people, new people. Certain of the plaintiffs didn't ask for their money back, but the city's been holding on to their money. Certain of the plaintiffs who paid didn't ask for who asked for their money back have already received their money back from the city. So you see, there's a lot of things going on. So this is what I would consider the council to be thinking about between now and the next meeting when you decide if you're going to accept these objections and not pass on that special assessment. Look at the appraisals that are being completed. I've never seen them. I haven't seen them yet because I don't have access to that until we get to the discovery phase. But you certainly have access to that. And when you read those appraisals, think about whether or not if they hold water in your mind. Not just because some expert has told you they do, but from your own perspective as homeowners, as people with real estate experience, which I know several of you have real estate experience. And you can look at those appraisals, look at what you know about the market, and you think about what holds water from your perspective, not from your expert's perspective. Thank you. And I know that, as I said, there's probably others that would like to get up and speak. Thank you.
Public hearing, Bob, do you have a question that right now? Or for Diana? Okay, go ahead. We have a question apparently, Ms. Longery.
Mayor, thank you. Ms. Longery, the paramount thing you're suggesting is the reasonable time period to resolve this issue? Is that what your concern is?
No, my first concern is paragraph number 1, that our objection is that the proposed special assessment is greater than the benefit received, i.e. greater than the increase in market value as a result of the road project. But secondarily, which will be argued in court, is that this special assessment, reassessment, has been done in a time that is not reasonable. Because, see, this is a little bit different than a typical reassessment in that we are coming out of a stipulation that the parties agreed to, a stipulation for dismissal. And so, you see, it's got a little bit different posture than just a typical road project the first time you're calling in people.
Are there others that wish to speak? You need to state your name and address at the podium.
Bob Streen, 1695 Howard Street. You guys said you needed signatures and some documentation, so we put that together. But our main concern was we stood up here a few years ago and had the discussion, and we asked what we thought the property values would go up, and we were kind of assured that the streets being done, the curbs, the new streets, the new roads, would help the value of the properties go up. We haven't seen that, and we all know that, and that's why we're here. Where do I turn this in?
Over there, Mr. Love.
So then when they took a vote, the council was a 4-to-1 vote. Bob Cardinal voted to move forward with that assessment. He must have probably forgot all of what he learned back in 2003. So then, now we get to fast forward to last Monday night's meeting, where then the council looks at the objections and they decide, are they going to accept the objections and not do the reassessment at the amounts that had been proposed? Are they going to adjust the amounts, or are they just going to move forward? So our next clip is from just last Monday's meeting, and let's take a look.
That then moves us to unfinished business, and so the first item there is the Hills and Dales Street area improvements. It's City Project 09-115, and we're looking for a resolution that adopts the revised assessment roll. And so is that Mr. Love?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This item is for the Hills and Dales Area Street Improvement, City Project 0915. As you recall, on February 11th, 2013, we held a public hearing for the reassessment of 11 properties associated with this project. At this time, we are not recommending any adjustments to the roll. Staff is recommending Council to approve the resolution for for the adoption of the revised assessment roll for the Hills and Dales Area Street Improvements, City Project 0915.
The majority of all the properties are either assessed at a special assessment of $6,300, I believe, or $6,800. So to give you some perspective, one property, the special assessment was going to be $4,000. A couple of other properties were going to be like $5,200. But for the most part, all of them were going to be in excess of $6,000. And the question then becomes, does a road improvement project increase the market value of these properties so that if they were to sell their house tomorrow, that they would be able to have an increased sale price of $6,000 or more? Let's continue on.
All right. Ms. Gentleman?
Again, I think this is to the attorney. So there is basically no reason for us to further discuss this, correct? We've gone through the process. We had the reappraisals. They've been reassessed, and so it is up to us now to just move on, basically, correct?
Well, Mayor and Council, this is back for you because of the objections and the way the process works. Staff has to go back, do an analysis internally about the specifics of the objection. For example, you hear about many of these when they come up where a deferral is requested due to the age of the person living on the property, and the recommendation that comes back is, assuming financial documents are provided that bear that out, then the recommendation would be to defer or put them into that program. In this case, all of them are based on basically two theories. One was the time element, and the second one is simply that they didn't think there was value there. So the recommendation is pretty clear on all of them because they were the same objection. So unless you have questions, it's just a matter of going through the process to essentially deny those cancellations and work the assessment roll in. And then if the necessary steps that presumably the landowners take are to appeal those back into court, that's what happens next. Or obviously they have the opportunity to pay them or take part in whatever programs we have. So.
Thank you.
One question just on the formula. For the original assessment and the revised assessment, is there a different formula that a appraiser does to do a special assessment? Do they do the same thing as they did before and just came up with a different amount? I know you're not an assessor, but you know how you have two different amounts here. Was the same exact appraisal way done for the first one as the second one?
Before he answers, part of that, of course, is the passage of time.
Yeah.
So, circumstances are different depending upon when the appraisal is done. Mr. Cantrud?
And Mayor and Council, that's very true. I mean, whenever you're dealing with property, I also think that the easy answer is no two people are going to do it the same way twice. So not only do you have a function of time and a little bit of market shift that gives you a much better, if we could wait 3 or 4.
except that the whole point is that when it was first assessed, that special assessment to start with, there were no appraisals done at all. So that was the correct answer, is that for the first time around, there were no appraisals that were completed. And that now with the reassessment, they did their special benefits appraisals, but of course it's land only, not taking into account the improvements upon the land, such as the buildings and the garage. So let's continue on.
For years and really probably get a different number on all of these. But, you know, as government, we have to move forward as projects move forward, so that's why you do your best with what you have at the time. So in this case, you know, a lot of these properties, well, all of them actually received the benefit of a reassessment that's at a slightly lower rate. So, another appraiser could have come in and suggested that it was actually more. In this case, you know, we didn't try to shop out a number that would be larger. We took that person's assessment and actually appraisal, and that's what we used. So that's why the number there is lower than the first one.
And I was just questioning because it said a special benefits appraisal, and I didn't know if that was something that was different.
That's what's done on every one of these projects, because what you're trying to measure is the benefit to the property of the actual street improvement project itself.
I move staff recommendation adopt.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Our flag is up, and so we have someone who wants to speak.
A public hearing, we don't have to.
Did you hear Ms. Juniman saying, well, it's not a public hearing, so we don't have to? That's her attitude. Now, keep in mind, she's up for re-election this fall, and when you have a council person who says, well, it's not a public hearing, we don't have to, I think it's time to move along. So let's continue.
Thank you very much, Council. Diana Longry. My office is at 1321 Frost Avenue East, and I'm here speaking on behalf of the property owners. One thing I would like to address is that last time I was here, I had encouraged each and every one of you to take, especially those of you with real estate background, to take a look at the special benefit appraisals that were completed this time around. Has anybody done that?
Seems like an invalid question. What are your points?
As the assessing authority, it's probably important that the assessing authority, those people who enact the assessment, actually has available to them, and that they review the raw data upon which they're making their assessment decision. So I was just simply asking if anybody had actually looked at those special assessments to review the basis. The question is exactly what Ms. Kay was asking. How was the numbers arrived at?
Mayor, point of information.
Mr. Cardinal?
Is that public information?
I believe so. At least, well, it would be after any kind of court thing.
Well, I know that under discovery, it's available to me, but at this point, it's available to you, the assessing authority. It's available to you. It's not available to me, but it is available to you.
Well, Mayor,
Yes?
I just question why would we be able to see it if it wasn't available?
I think we could see it if it was available.
And Mayor and Council, maybe I can answer that question. When those are prepared, they're prepared at my request, and that is to maintain that attorney-client privilege, because obviously that's a number that's derived for the purposes of making an assessment. Pardon me. If any of you wanted to, on an individual basis, see the appraisal that we come up with, I'm more than happy to share with you on a one-to-one basis that appraisal report. So it's not available to the general public. Obviously, when one gets appealed into district court, it becomes relevant, and so it's shared then, you know, as part of the discovery between the lawyers. But no, it's not considered public information before then.
Mayor, none of these, I did communicate with someone in this lawsuit, and that was not requested of me to review those appraisals.
Yeah. She's making a smokescreen.
No,
Nothing that she's saying is valid
please,
towards
sir.
our decision, because we don't have to, we are the assessing authority, but we hire somebody who is knowledgeable because we are not. And so we take on faith the fact that they are well-educated, knowledgeable person who can do assessments. And so that's what happens in a lot of cases. And so Ms. Longray would like us all to believe that we should all be doing the type of research that she would do, being the meticulous person that she is.
Thank you.
To take things to all ends of the universe and draw this out in a long period of time.
Mayor,
Yes.
she's our lawyer, so I mean...
Yes, she is her lawyer, and so
Right.
she's practicing law up here in front of the council.
I'm thrilled.
And when I was here last, I actually did request the council, on behalf of my clients, to look into that.
Mayor,
The question...
Mayor,
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Cardinal.
Mayor, I
Sorry.
certainly would have looked into it if somebody had requested it to me with some kind of indication. I mean, you might have mentioned it in your presentation, but if you would have
That's okay.
told me to look into it, I would have. But I did get some correspondence with these 11 property owners, but there was no request from them. If you had requested me to look at those 11 property owners' appraisals, new appraisals, I certainly would have looked at them.
Thank you. Thank you very much. The question about the special benefit, and I do want to just quickly, Mr. Cantrud was right. It talks about the special benefit conferred as a result of the project, and under the case law, as you know from having been through this before, that's measured by the increase in market value of that property as a result of this improvement project. So that's exactly correct. And then lastly, I just wanted to say that we were hopeful that come this evening that many on the council would have said, because it is within your purview to do so, to say that, well, let's say an average, let's say $3,000 assessment for each of these parcels. And then more than likely, you may have been able to find that there wouldn't have been a continued assessment appeal. But, because I know the council has done that in the past. We've had special assessments where it seems like it was too high. Perhaps a property owner, such as a gas station, had access onto a roadway, and then the council made a motion and said, well, let's adjust that so it's more reasonable for the circumstances. And with regard to the before and after appraisal of the property, I think it's inaccurate to think that if you did an appraisal, the after appraisal years afterwards, that is valid. I believe that the case law demonstrates that you want to do your before and your after close in time before and after the project, much like you do with other kind of valuations, whether or not if it's in probate or family law. So thank you very much, and again, I just wanted to reiterate for my clients that we wish that there would have been a different outcome this evening.
To give you the end of what happened is that the council took a vote, and it was the same vote that had happened 2 weeks before, 4-1. Bob Cardinal voted to go ahead with the special assessment. And it's interesting because recently in a previous meeting, he was making a big deal about that they want to avoid lawsuits, that they want to avoid lawsuits and not have lawsuits. And yet he knows that there is not the market value increase as a result of the road project, as a result of his past tenure on the council, and so he knows that indeed there will be the assessment appeal and it will be a lawsuit. So his very idea that he wants no lawsuits is contrary to the actions he took. And it's also a flip-flop from his positions that he had back in 2003. Isn't it fascinating when you can find the archival film footage and compare yesteryear to today? In the end, many things never change. So until next week, bye-bye.